Bacta is a liquid substance, thicker than water. The healing properties are so effective that it's considered nearly a miracle substance. It wouldn't just heal fresh wounds, but could regrow organic tissue, nerves, skin, and muscles. It reduced swelling, mended broken bones, and even helped with trauma to the brain. Bacta started working immediately upon application. Regardless, within reason, of how it was stored, it was warm to the touch. Despite the miraculous nature of the substance, not everyone praised it. Shockingly, I didn't find any reports of the slave nature of how the galaxy obtained it being a controversy. People had an issue with the stuff physically. It was a thick liquid many beings would describe as slime. Patients who needed deeper treatments and had to be submerged in the substance said it felt like they were being swallowed alive. Doctors would often inject the patient with sedatives to have them relax as they went into the Bacta tank. The warm embrace of the liquid along with the sedatives opened patients up to something euphoric. After the quick healing work was done and the sedative wore off, there was a unique form of depression that could follow for a few Galactic Standard days, as they came down from this state of mind. The healing substance isn't found naturally in the galaxy. It's composed of cavum and alazi bacterias mixed with ambori fluid. Cavum is a synthetic chemical, where alazi is a natural bacteria. I couldn't find anything specific on ambori, but given the context, I imagine it's akin to our world's bacteriostatic water, a sterile water that inhibits the growth of bacteria in our own medications. The final ingredient is a Vratixian barley called Vrataxia rhenanicus. These words are really hard to get through. Bacta was created by the Vratix, an insectoid-like species native to the planet Thyferra. They didn't create Bacta for its healing properties. For their species, Bacta provides what is described as mystical pleasure. It was so effective for their species that they became obsessed with the drug. When human settlers found their way to Thyferra and discovered the miracle healing properties of Bacta had on most humanoid species, they knew they had to have it. The humans exploited the Vratix's addiction to the drug, and before too long, the insects were a population of slaves, and the humans running things were incredibly wealthy. Bacta came into prominence during the High Republic era, made the current primary healing compound in the galaxy obsolete seemingly overnight. Juvan, also called Rejuve, had some of the same healing abilities as Bacta, but was far less effective. When the great hyperspace disaster spread terror throughout the galaxy, there were fears of shortages on both Juvan and Bacta, as many manufacturers of the former were midway through their transition to producing the latter. In fact, in the days just following this terrorist attack against the Legacy Run, Senator Isaac Noor of Sereno accused the Cellcath of the attack as a way to delay Bacta ruining their business of producing Juvan. The Cellcath were innocent in this, of course. The galaxy's demand for Bacta outpaced what the Vratix could produce. Two major pharmaceutical players stepped in, the Zoltan Corporation and the Zukfra Corporation. Both companies also produced Bacta paraphernalia, like the Bacta tank, Flex Poly Bacta suit, Bacta patches, direct injectable Bacta, Bacta grenades, and even a consumable known as Bactade. The two companies were supposed to be separate entities, but legend has it that backdoor dealings under the reign of the Galactic Empire led to the Bacta cartel running both of them, having a powerful monopoly over the entire galaxy's Bacta production. Around 7 ABY in Legends, there was a brief but crucial war called the Bacta War. The larger galactic civil war was going well for the New Republic, formerly the Rebel Alliance. They had taken Coruscant, the political capital of the galaxy, away from the Empire. The leader of the Empire at that time was Asane Izard. Izard was a ruthless Imperial who at one point sold her own father out for career advancement. She was a human female native to Coruscant. Her hair was black with shocking white curtains, and she had heterochromia, giving her a red and blue eye. The red eye is unrelated to anything Sith or Force related. As the New Republic took Coruscant, Izard boarded the Super Star Destroyer Lusankia and fled the planet. She assembled a small fleet and headed to Thyferra, the source of the galaxy's supply of life-saving Bacta. Izard managed to play corporate politics with such success, she essentially took the planet and control of the Bacta trade without firing a single shot from a blaster. Izard, holding medication over the heads of every being in the galaxy, was obviously a bad thing. The New Republic knew they had to take the planet away from the Empire. Rogue Squadron was reassembled under the command of the legendary rebel pilot Wedge Antilles. Karan Horn, a skilled pilot and Jedi under Luke Skywalker's new Jedi Order, also joined the mission, as General Jan Dodonna was amongst Republic prisoners on Izard's flagship. Horn was once a captive there as well, and he vowed to free Dodonna and the other prisoners. The New Republic, walking on eggshells as the galaxy was in a delicate place with all the power struggles and years of war, refused to sanction the mission. The space around Thyferra not only had a small Imperial fleet, but a warlord called Zinj was also a threat in that part of space. Furthermore, Thyferra wasn't conquered in a military sense. Isard simply took control of a prominent corporation. Every member of Rogue Squadron except one resigned their commissions, making themselves civilians. Pash Kraken was the only pilot who remained with the New Republic Navy. He returned to his A-Wing unit at the request of Wedge Antilles. Kraken's father was the head of New Republic intelligence. Wedge thought that if Kraken was part of the mission, the New Republic wouldn't have plausible deniability that they did not sanction the actions, which would lead to further conflicts and complications. No longer part of the military, Rogue Squadron kept the name unofficially. A new Rogue Squadron was formed within the Republic military and given the latest and greatest tech and gear. Through some fancy bureaucratic maneuvering, the previous Rogue Squadron ships and gear were sold as broken surplus. Tycho Selchu bought all the equipment for the now rogue Rogues. Selchu was caught in his trickery and followed Antilles' example of resigning his rank and joining up with the civilian fighter group. The rest of the group pulled in what favors, materials, equipment, and recruits they could. The most notable of this resource gathering was pilot Mirax Tarek's father, being the legendary smuggler Booster Tarek, who also worked with an even more legendary underworld figure, Talon Card. The smugglers got the rest of the weaponry the unofficial Rogue Squadron would need to take on the much larger foe. A squadron of Twi'lek pilots joined the cause as well in their own custom-made Frankenstein fighters known as Cherdaki. These were TIE fighter cockpits with X-Wing S-foils, engines, and armaments. Antilles, a longtime Rebel pilot, went back to the basics of the early days of the Rebel Alliance. He chose his targets very specifically, and a guerrilla warfare campaign began against Isard's forces. It took some time, but the scrappy militia reduced Isard's strength considerably. They even managed to isolate and eliminate Star Destroyers with their accompanying starfighters through their superior skills. In a massive final confrontation, the small Rebel starfighters and a group of freighters outfitted with extra torpedo launchers linked telemetry data from targeting computers to hit the Lusankya with up to 80 proton torpedoes at once, overwhelming the technically superior ship's shields. Antilles also made allies of soldiers and security officers from the competitor company to the one that Isard took over. The small ground force overwhelmed Isard's new base of operations and took the majority of her management by force. Isard escaped once again and was presumed dead after her shuttle was destroyed. This turned out to be a ruse, but that will have to be a tangent for another time. The Bacta War was won. In some more fun bureaucratic maneuvering, every member of Rogue Squadron who had resigned their commission had their paperwork accidentally misfiled. The New Republic took credit for the successful mission, but the Rogues weren't upset. They understood the position their new fragile government was in. Every member was offered their position back, which they all accepted to the last man. They continued on as the official Rogue Squadron once again, and began to track down the prisoners Koran Horn originally wanted to rescue. Although Isard's control of the Bacta supply was short-lived, the galaxy was incredibly dependent on the drug. Countless lives were altered or lost due to the shortage that rippled out for a while after Rogue Squadron freed Thyferra. I couldn't find anything solid on what was done about having the entire galaxy's medicinal eggs in one basket, but I would think, and hope, that more facilities were made throughout the galaxy to ensure this type of thing couldn't happen again. Here are some notable events where Bacta played a crucial role. During the Clone Wars, the Clone Army had to fight primarily against a mechanical foe in the droid army. Droids don't get tired, clones do. The clones needed to be patched up quickly and sent back into various theaters of war to not let the clankers gain more ground. Bacta was used in small doses, that is, patches and injections, in the field, and more serious injuries were treated with Bacta tanks. Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker, at the time going by Darth Vader, had a tremendous duel over the lava fields of Mustafar. Obi-Wan was treated temporarily with the Bacta for his wounds and burns. Vader never gave up on his treatments. He had a state-of-the-art Bacta tank put in his fortress on Mustafar, where he kept the pain of his beaten body at bay with regular treatments. He hoped the Bacta would heal his lungs enough that he wouldn't need the suit's built-in respirator. But that wish never came to fruition. The first time we got to see Bacta in action was in in The Empire Strikes Back after Luke Skywalker has his run-in with the Wampa. He's floating in a fully submersible Bacta tank inside Echo Base on Hoth. In the incredible game Jedi Survivor, Cal Kestis finds a fallen High Republic Jedi, Dagan Gera. Gera was kept in stasis and his physical body submerged in Bacta for hundreds of years, preserving his organic cells. This is the longest term use case I could find about Bacta. It's also interesting to note that Gera lost his arm in a lightsaber duel not long before being encased in the healing liquid, and despite being in it for so long, the arm didn't even begin to regrow. Even this miracle substance has its limits. Boba Fett, after battling his way out of the acidic stomach of the Sarlacc, was left a burned and scarred mess. He survived on grit with the aid of the native Tatooine Tusken Raiders. When he took control of some territory once owned by Jabba the Hutt and got some power of his own, he had a Bacta tank installed in his chambers that, over time, healed the majority of the damage the acid and time in the harsh desert had caused. Check out this transmission next for more deep dives into Star Wars lore.